Oh, all
If
right,
it,
I'm excited to introduce Mike Eytel. Thank you so much.
does that look good, by the way?
Looks great. Yep.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I'd like to thank the City of Boulder and Resource Central for inviting me back. This is my third presentation on Western Water specifically. This year we're calling it Western Water Rights, Riparian Doctrine, and the Prior Appropriation System, and how the West was how water settled the West. My name is Mike Eytel. Some of you may know me from previous presentations. I'm a project manager for Advanced Engineering and Environmental Services in Dillon, Colorado. I'm a hydrologist by decree. Ski bombing brought me to Colorado in 1993, and I've been here ever since. And I've worked for different capacities doing various jobs in water resources. I worked for the state engineer's office for 10 years in the Division I in the South Platte Basin. And then I worked for 16 years for the Colorado River District out of Glenwood Springs, covering West Slope water, where I really got into the Colorado River issues specifically. And then I've been working for AE2S in Dillon for 2 years now, developing their water resource program in Western Colorado. AE2S is a civil engineering firm, about 300 engineers, employee owned, primarily started in the Midwest, but we've slowly have a footprint in the Rocky Mountains. We have offices in Montana, Utah, and 2 in Colorado currently, and a small office in Western Colorado, Grand Junction. But I'm here to talk about Western Water. Enough about talking for me. And I appreciate everybody coming here tonight. I'm going to have a couple breaks in here as we talk to ask questions. So if you have questions as they come up, feel free to hit them up in the chat, and we'll take them as they come in during the breaks kind of in this process. But overall, here's our meeting objectives. We're really high level here, folks. It's the evening. You're more than welcome to partake in an adult beverage if you like. I think I go better with a hazy IPA or even a maybe a strong Cabernet would work well with this presentation. But anyways, enough of that. But we're going to talk about the history of Western water. We're going to keep these at a high level above the clouds. We're not going to get down into too much detail on much of this, but it's going to be a lot of information coming at you. I'm not here to bore you, but some of it's just going to it'll be sequential, and you'll kind of understand it. We're going to talk about Western water, prior appropriation system, and how that affected the West. And then we're going to talk about a real general about how river compacts are developed in the West, in the United States, and how they're implemented and what those implications are. And then we're going to focus in on the Colorado River Compact. And then I'm going to add some information about what we're doing today, where the river is, where the Lake Powell and Mead are today, and what that looks like, and how the ongoing negotiations between the 7 states are going. I'm not going to get into, again, a lot of detail on that. And I'm going to be trying to use the similar information that the state and the Upper Colorado River Commission is providing, along with the Bureau of Reclamation. Most of this information is readily available on the internet for folks. I just happen to be a little bit more in tune to it since I deal with it on a daily basis. And then at the very end, we're going to finish up with just a couple slides on what conservation and efficiency means for the Colorado River, Colorado folks, residents, and excuse me, what we can do individually to help conserve water within the Colorado River system. Anyways, here we go. So we're going to get going. So anyways, the 100th meridian really divides the country into 2, the riparian to the east, the doctrine, and the prior appropriations to the west. The 100th meridian really defines the humid east and the arid west. 9 states in the interior west have pure prior appropriations doctrines, while 3 states have mixed riparian, and then there's 6 states that are a combination of the 2. This slide's a little bit different, and it's showing the states in the red are the ones that are a pure prior appropriation, the ones that kind of straddle the Mississippi River area and the 100th meridian. They kind of blend the 2. And then as far as you go on the Northwest and California, they kind of have a little bit of a blending of both. Colorado is a strict prior appropriations doctrine state. And again, we were developed in 1876 when they adopted the original prior appropriations doctrines for Colorado. Colorado really breaks its water rights into a couple of different things. Yeah, it's determined in the Colorado Constitution. It's defined by statute in our Colorado statutes, and then it's been bolstered and held up by case law through the water court process. In Colorado, all water of the streams are declared the property of the public, dedicated to the use of the people, and subject to appropriation. Is the right to divert unappropriated waters of any natural stream and apply it to beneficial uses should never be denied. Prior appropriations gives the better water right, the oldest water right, the first use on the river. It also created the statutes, the Colorado Revised Statutes, kind of is the kind of the playbook, if you will, for the water rights in the West. Created the water courts, which specifically grant the water rights and they evaluate the water rights. And then it also created the state engineer's office. The state engineer's office is also the oldest civil job in the state. The water commissioner was one of the first civil servants created in the state of Colorado after 1876. That shows the importance of what what water meant to the developing of Colorado. As far as that goes, the water courts oversee all applications and grant those applications. The right to grant a water right is never diminished. They will always intend to grant water rights if it's conditional. You have a conditional water right and absolute water rights. The state engineer's office consults, is kind of the consulting agency for the water court, and they verify that the engineering aspects of any water right is up to speed. And it also allows the attorney general some significant leeway in the court application process. It also helps define in-stream flow rights and the recreational in-channel diversions, which we're going to talk a little bit more as we go into all that here. Excuse me, got a little crazy with my clicker. Sorry about that. And then on the next slide, Colorado's a headwater state, meaning all water really starts and falls on Colorado, leaves Colorado. There's only one small tributary in Colorado that actually is an import, and that is a small section of the Green River as it comes into Colorado in the northwest part of the state. We have 4 major river basins in the state. You have the South Platte, the Arkansas River, the Rio Grande, and the Colorado River Basin are the 4 major basins within the state. The state also has 7 divisions for the water resources, breaking it down into the smaller river basins within the state, and that's for administration. 19 states receive water from the Colorado River that emanates in Colorado. So you can understand that all the neighboring states are really heavily reliant on the Colorado River and the Colorado snowpack, which is the primary driver for our keeping our streams wet and flowing. Again, it's a headwater state. This is a classic graphic put out by the state engineer's office or the Division of Water Resources. It's a snake diagram, and it shows basically a volume depiction of each major river basin in the state. The heavier black lines and blue lines show larger volumes of water. Annually, the state of Colorado produces nearly 10 million acre-feet of water through snow and river deliveries. Each of those major river basins in there that the state has, and you can see the amount of water that each one generates on average. It's not an annual average, it's over time, but it varies with snowpack and climate change. But you can see the Colorado River is by far the largest river in the state, followed by the Animas La Plata, and then the Yampa and the Snake River Basin, which are all tributaries to the Colorado River Basin. So it shows the impact that Colorado snowpack really has on the headwater state and the Colorado River itself, as well as our folks on the Front Range and the Eastern Slope rely heavily on the Colorado River, as we're going to talk a little bit more as we go on. Colorado has a rich history in water rights. With water is for fighting, whiskey's for drinking is one of the main kind of adages of the old days. Here's the 2 guys fighting out on the shovel on the ditch bank. Really not, it's kind of an animated scene, but really it's not far from the truth of what was happening in the turn of the century. But primarily the water rights development in Colorado was really the first folks to come to Colorado was for the gold and the minerals. And so the miners were the first folks to put the water rights to test. And it ultimately created the prior appropriations doctrine, which is fundamentally first in time, first in right. So the person that appropriates the water is the oldest. The oldest water right in the state of Colorado is the People's Ditch in the San Luis Valley, and I believe it was actually decreed for an 1852, 1851 was when it started, and it was a Cieca, which is ancient pueblos. Ultimately, we're using that water, but they were the first ones to have the oldest water right in the state of Colorado. And it goes on with that. And as far as the miners, ultimately, when you develop a water right, you have to be able to divert the water and measure the water and put it to beneficial use. The miner's inch was the original volume or rate method for developing water rights. Thankfully, we don't use it, but primarily what it was how much water you could push through a 1-inch orifice or a pipe, and it was basically a way to rate flows and develop it. We now use cubic feet per second as the primary method for a flow rate, along with the annual volumes we measure in acre feet. We also can use gallons per minute if it's wells. But every water right has a flow rate, has a decree, has a appropriations date, and an adjudication date of when it was approved in water court. All those help determine the age and the priority of the water right. And again, first and right, first in time is the most simple way to understand it. It seems simple in implementation, but there are lots of nuances in developing water rights and actually administering them. It's a tough job. The state engineer does their best to do that. And everything's not black and white when it comes to water. There's always an exception to the rule. And the water court cases are what allows people to have those exceptions if they can manage to get those decreed. And we'll go from that. So ultimately, water rights were developed in the Article 16 for mining and irrigation in the Colorado Constitution. It determines that the waters are the streams are public property, and it allows, again, for folks to divert unappropriated amounts of water. And it also gives implied easements or right of way for ditches and flumes. Ultimately, you do not have, in the riparian doctrine, if you own land along the river, you have access to the river and you have the ability to use it. Here in the West, a lot of times the actual use is far away from the actual diversion of the surface water. So you have to be able to convey that through ditches, pipes, canals, etc., laterals, as they will. This guy's here, he's turning his head gate in, turning a little bit of water into a lateral. And that's how folks deal with the surface waters. It's a lot of work and a lot of time to move surface water. But the one good thing about most surface water, if it's not in the sprinkler, is it's being moved by gravity. So there's not a lot of energy consumption on surface water. Efficiencies aren't quite there, but it allows for easy use, easily to divert and get it out of the stream and apply it to beneficial use on the lands. Again, we've talked about the first and right, first in time. It does not, what that does is it allows for shortages to be distributed. It's not equal when there's a time of shortage. Again, the senior has to have his full decree satisfied before the next downstream junior can take water. So that's how it works. If your water right is junior to the senior who is short, ultimately the state engineer's office can curtail your use until that senior water right is satisfied. It's a difficult situation, and a lot of times requires a little bit of tact in, say, politics, and just being a good person to be able to administer water rights. The water commissioners are on the front edge of dealing with it with angry. Nobody wants to have their water right turned off. So when you get curtailed, it's a little bit. You got to follow the rules, I guess I would say. And then you got other types of water rights. So ultimately, you have to be able to divert the water right to put it to beneficial use. And it has to have a efficient practice. You can't waste the water. They want you to put this water for use, beneficial uses. There are a number of beneficial uses that are all determined in decrees. I don't know the exact number, but I think there's like 17 different beneficial uses or more. Most of them are irrigation, domestic, industrial use, commercial, wildlife, municipal, and for fire protection. So when you're a decree, you actually will state what the uses are that you are going to intend to use. And if you want to change your water right to use it, you can go into water court and add that additional use. And again, the part of being able to divert water is whether it's tributary to a stream or non-tributary to the stream. And this is going to be more important as we start talking about Colorado River water and how it's used throughout the state. Non-tributary water, and this is all done through the revised statutes and the prior appropriation system. Tributary water is subject to the priority system, or non-tributary groundwater or non-tributary transbasin water would be not subject to the prior appropriations doctrine. If that water is brought into the basin, the water user has the ability to use that water and deliver it to its diversions, minus some small transit losses. But again, against the call, they can actually use that water even though the local water rights may be called out. So it's very important to a lot of the municipalities and the Front Range agricultural water users, because it's a supplemental supply on the Front Range. What types of water rights? We've been talking a little bit about them, but there really are three primary methods or types of water rights that you can get. Is a surface right, which is a direct flow right, and the water is diverted out of the stream, usually through a low head dam or some type of diversion off of the river. It could be a pump, but usually it's a surface diversion, and it's put into a ditch or a pipe. And then you have the groundwater right that I was just talking about. And that's a right where it's diverted from alluvial aquifer that is tributary to the stream still. It might be groundwater, but ultimately by pumping that water out of the ground, you're actually depleting a like amount from the stream. It has lag depletions. Storage right, which is another larger water right. It allows you to divert water, whether it's a surface right, groundwater right, and to impound that water in a reservoir. You must have a storage right to be able to store water in Colorado, and that's a separate one. But all of our large reservoirs in the state all have those water rights. And again, they all have they have appropriations date and adjudication date in court, and that is used to help determine their priority. Again, that the state issues. That picture right there is the Glenwood G wave, and it's a recreational in-channel diversion. Actually, it's not a true one because they never went into water court, but that's what it would be. Use that just more of as a picture. But they're here again. These are the exceptions to the water rights, and these are more of a recreation or you might want to call them environmental. In the 1970s, mid-70s, the Colorado Water Conservation Board was given the statutory authority to appropriate in-stream flow rights. Prior to that, prior to the Clean Water Act being developed in the United States, we really hadn't invented the environment, folks. The river was not considered main use, didn't have a primary, the environment didn't have a say at the table. These in-stream flows allow this Water Conservation Board to protect streams to a minimum degree to help for environmental purposes. In addition, these recreational in-channel diversions can be used for recreational uses like play waves, things like that you see there. And again, it's the either the CWCB or municipalities can hold these. Again, they have a priority date and an adjudication date. The one major issue with these, as far as being administrable and having any kind of teeth in the administration on the river, is they're very junior. They were started to be developed through the 1970s up to current dates today. Recreational in-channel diversions, I believe the first one was in the 1996 in Golden, and they're junior, so they don't have the ability to call out a lot of water users. But what they do show is the state has the ability to protect the environment and recreational economies. We understand people like to come to Colorado for the beauty and the natural streams and the landscapes. And having wet rivers is part, and clean wet rivers is part of that economic engine. Drives tourism, drives skiing, fishing, hunting, any number of types of tourist activities, as we all know. Either love it or hate it, but people are here to come to Colorado for the same reason that we live here, and we want to protect those and protect our streams, because it's what keeps people coming back to Colorado. And then you have in the water rights world, whether or not the water is consumptive, and that is ultimately the value of a water right is ultimately how much water that water right can consume in an agricultural context or in a municipal context. That consumptive use is the actual use of the water that is no longer, it's taken out of the system and no longer available. In a domestic situation, using it within your house, there's a small, about 10% is lost to the stream through consumption, evaporation, and things like that while it's being treated. Other rights that are very popular in Colorado are non-consumptive rights. The recreational in-channel diversion would be a non-consumptive right. An in-stream flow right would be a non-consumptive right. Also, what you're looking at there in the picture is an old picture of the Shoshone Power Plant in Glenwood Canyon. It is one of the senior water rights on the Colorado River for the senior appropriation for 1,250 CFS. My former employer, some folks that may have seen this in the news because it's very popular right now, but they are in the process of purchasing that Shoshone power right from the Excel Power for the tune of about $100 million. And with that, that water will be conveyed to the West Slope in perpetuity. It'll be a change case, take it into water court, and decree it for in-stream flow purposes. The power plant is quite old and doesn't operate very efficiently anymore. So this is a good move for the West Slope, good move for all water users, good move for recreational uses on the river. It'll help secure and it actually just secures the administrative system that we've kept in place. Keeps water flowing down Glenwood Canyon, and again flowing towards Lake Powell and Lake Mead. That's a big undertaking for the River District, and it's neat to see that happen. It's been something that's been going on for 20 plus years or more, largely behind the scenes. Large amount of money, but when you think about it in the big picture over decades, it's probably a small price to pay for protecting the Colorado River. Stay tuned to that because that's going through its final phases of funding. And then you got federal reserved rights. These can be for national parks, military installations, wilderness areas, Native American reservations, winter rights, which again is a federal court decree associated with Native American tribes. The biggest thing here is I would say is these rights, while they can be appropriated, are difficult to administer. They're settlements, so they get inserted into the prior appropriation system after the fact. Probably for today's discussion, I think the biggest take-home point here is the Colorado River Native American tribal water rights settlements that have been being developed over the last, settled over the last 20 years. They're far from finished, but in the end, all the 32 odd Native American tribes within the Colorado River Basin, they hold nearly 25% of the Colorado River flows, give or take a few percent. But that's one quarter of the water is being allocated to the tribes through these federal reserved water rights. It's a long, arduous process. Bringing water to tribal lands is very important, and also giving them the right to clean water, just like we have in the cities. A lot of tribal areas still truck water to individual homes. They do not have running water, flushing toilets, etc. So this is something that's going to bring them into more modern situations, sanitary sewers and things like that. It's going to make life much better for the Native Americans, and it's a long overdue, if you ask me. And it's nice to see them having a seat at the table in Colorado River issues. Stay tuned because it's you're going to see more of that as we go through the reallocation of the Colorado River. And then finally, one of the bigger types of water rights in Colorado is the trans-basin, trans-mountain diversion. And again, it goes talking about the tributary versus non-tributary. Trans-basin diversion is 100% depletive to the basin of the origin because that water is exported out of the basin. It will not come back through return flows like agricultural practice because, again, 100% of that is removed from the basin. And once diverted, that water is no longer subject to the priority system and can be delivered at will to any uses that they're decreed for on the eastern slope. This diagram shows that about 44 diversions around the state, mostly along the Continental Divide, but they don't always have to bring water across the Continental Divide. You can transfer water within a basin, tributary basin, to just different basins. And then we have 25 trans-mountain diversions, things like Alva B. Adams, The Roberts Tunnel are the big ones. The Fry Arc project, run by the Bureau of Reclamation. Appleby Adams is part of the Colorado Big Thompson project, and again, part of the Bureau of Reclamation's projects. And those are all important because they take that water to the Front Range and again, deliver a supplemental supply that is not subject to that basin's priority systems. Some folks like to call Trans Mountain Water liquid gold because of that. I'm not sure if, it's definitely a valuable thing. But if you were to look on this online, you can see the number of them. There are some smaller ones, there are some private ones, but the majority of these water rights are usually owned by municipalities or agricultural irrigation districts or conservancy districts, or the benefactors of the Bureau of Reclamation projects. Southeastern Water Conservancy District and Northern Water are the two primary ones on the Front Range who utilize these. This little mock-up here is some really just showing you the footprints of where that Colorado River water is being used currently in Colorado on the Front Range and around the Denver metro area. Aurora, Colorado Springs, and Denver both rely heavily on the use of Colorado River water in their system, as does the Southeastern Water Conservancy District and Northern. And they all use them for various supplemental irrigation or municipal supplies. And the one good thing about the West Slope water is a lot of times there's storage involved in that, and they have upstream storage on the Eastern Slope. So they can deliver this water 365 days a year, not subject to the call. So it's a great way for the Front Range to further utilize water, but it also puts a further stress on the Colorado River because that water, again, is exported out, and it is of a high priority for the state of Colorado for use. And now I'm going to stop right there. And if folks have any questions, because we're kind of stopping about water rights, and then we're going to go into just a brief talk about compacts. But if anybody has some questions on water rights.
Let's see, we have a question here about any chance of larger residential lots, 1 acre or more, being allowed to have more than 2 water barrels. And they reference a home on a 1/5 acre lot has less need of captured water than a house on a 1 acre where 3/4 of the lot is landscaped.
So I'm not an expert on the rain barrel, although it was a long time coming. I think the rain barrel statute allowing folks to utilize rain barrels is a good use for individuals. I don't know that's easily changed for that small acreage. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I can't offer you a good answer for that.
No worries, so another question here. So you mentioned kind of where the in-stream flows were permitted by CWCB, and you said, I think the 70s was when like the shift kind of happened for recreational diversions in the 90s. But how does that compare to other states where was Colorado kind of ahead of the time or along with when they started to recognize kind of that environmental aspect of water?
I think it's all really, so, when you think about it, falls back more on probably the Clean Water Act being developed in 72, and then all the different states kind of coming in line, looking for the ways that they can administer the Clean Water Act within their state. And then the in-stream flows kind of came on as part of the Water Rights Administration Act. And it gave the CWCB the only entity that could actually hold that water right. And again, the recreational in channel was probably just something from the time of the 90s. River running and kayaking and rafting was becoming more popular in Colorado, and people were realizing that actually when you do push water through a wave or make a structure, you're creating a diversion, so it's actually falls within our system. And so they went ahead and put that to the test. Can we develop a water right around that? And lo and behold, they created some regulations and statutes to support that.
All right. Let's see. And one more here. There's been concern about speculation on water rights. What is the current status?
I think that's going to be constant status. Anyone who that's just one of the part about a water right, can't be speculative towards a water right, and any appropriation, large appropriation for sure, will always be subject to that. I think the state's working on legislation to try and tighten up that speculation status. But I think that's a part of the water court application, and then the acquisition of water rights falls under speculation a little bit. But I don't think it's prevents a purchase necessarily. It just prevents further development
All right.
without solid footing on water rights.
And let's see, last one before we keep going. Could you just quickly repeat what you mentioned about the Trans Mountain versus Trans Basin, the difference there?
Trans Mountain is really, I would call it like a through the Continental Divide, taking it out of the Colorado River system into, say, let's just use Roberts Tunnel. It takes water out of Summit County, brings it into Park County, into the South Platte Basin. That's a Trans Mountain. A Trans Basin diversion would be in a similar area. There's a small ditch up in South Park that actually diverts out of one basin, but it takes it out of the Tarryall drainage and brings it into the North Fork of the Platte River Basin, but it's all still within the Platte Basin, but it's moving into a different basin. So that water's still not subject to the priority once they bring it over to that sub basin. It's more like a small trans mountain diversion, but within the hydrographic boundaries. It's still hydrologically connected to the same river system.
All right, cool. Thank you. And I think let's keep on going.
All right, great questions, folks. Well, we'll keep plugging away here. We're going to switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to start talk about river compacts. Unfortunately, picture just got in my way. Colorado, as a state, we are involved in 9 river compacts throughout the state, and ultimately, compacts are tough. They were developed to deal with interstate and intrastate issues. So you have downstream users, other shared maybe upstream users where that water comes from a different country. Even it can be, in the Colorado River, we have Mexico as our other country, but up on the northern part along Canada, we have international compacts with Canada. And they were designed to help resolve differences between states and other cities within the states. Compacts. This got pictures of the 1922 Colorado River Compact. I believe they're down in New Mexico there. All those folks, if you were to take a picture today, I think you would see lots of different colors and lots more women in the room than you do there in that picture. The water resource world is very diverse. And is not quite as milk and cookies there as we see for the Colorado River Compact in 22. The room has changed significantly, and it's good to see as far as that goes. But again, these were designed to help solve problems with water within the West. They have legislation by Congress can be one way to settle them. They can also be settled by Supreme Court case. And a lot of these are ultimately once they created the compact and then they get tried. You can call them wars between states if you want. They do have some drawbacks. They're not easily to resolve. A lot of times they're ambiguous in their resolution, but you just have to kind of work with it. A little bit above my pay grade, but again, we're kind of entering an interesting time in the Colorado River where these negotiations are reopening, and so we are starting to pull at the the shoestrings of the compact and testing the waters and seeing how far we can push things. And this is just a shot of the different number of compacts that we have in the inner Rocky Mountains. A number of them. Colorado again has 9, and you can see they go back to 1922, and then you can see each year as they've further developed, you see them getting added up. But they were pretty busy in the 50s. And again, that's a large period of growth within the interior West. And again, water being the reason we're talking today, it's settled the West. That's why these compacts are here. There are 18 major river basins in the United States that are subject to these compacts. And again, I'm going to just talk about some of the problems with compacts. We help solve Native American tribal rights right now. That's one of the big issues for the Colorado River. They are awfully vague and ambiguous in some of their language. They're not consistent. They do have some flexibility, but a lot of times they have inflexible constraints within them. And they all have the ability to work with the way that they deplete the river. And again, they usually assign allocations to the individual states by acre feet and the amount of depletions that are allowed. There's various ways to method to do that, and they use stream gauges and things like that to measure across state lines and international boundaries, and to assure the delivery of these allocations. And again, they're in acre feet usually. Sometimes they're in percentages of a water supply, but for the most part, they're volumetrically limited for the various entities. And again, we're back to the Colorado River Compact. The Colorado River Compact is of high importance. The original compact was created in 1922, and it splits the river up into the lower basin and the upper basin. The upper basin is primarily Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, and a portion of Arizona, where the lower basin is Arizona, Nevada, and California primarily. And then we have Mexico as the international component of that. It splits the river into two basins, and it splits each basin gets 7.5 million acre feet for the upper basin. The lower basin, the lower basin of Colorado also has an additional 1 million acre feet of tributary usage. And how is that determined? Ultimately, that's not been monitored regularly since I think the early 2000s. But we again assume that they're just using at least about 1 million acre feet of that tributary water. And here's a little graphic of we're going to talk about how this is divvied up, and it's showing you a nice graphic of the hydrologic basin there of the Colorado River. The black shaded areas are those areas of export that I was talking about on the Front Range of Colorado. You also have some in New Mexico there, and then you can see that the metropolitan Southern California, LA, and San Diego are large export as well as the Salt Lake City area. But again, it's divided into the upper basin and the lower basin. And again, the upper basin of Colorado produces approximately 90% of the stream flow in the Colorado River Basin, hence why it was named the Colorado River and not the Green River. And a majority of that happens within Colorado. You got the upper Colorado, the Yampa, and the Gunnison are the primary rivers in the state. And then you got the other problem is you have the lower basin has approximately 90% of the people. It's a very similar situation even in Colorado. If you look at the Continental Divide, you got roughly 80% of the people live on the Front Range, most of the water coming out of the west slope. So it's almost the opposite, but it's still the pull of the water is going to the people is what the point that is. And then here in the lower basin, we're going to talk about how we allocate. I kind of ran through those numbers previously here, but we're going to kind of take this another step here. And it talks about the compact under Article 3A of the compact allocation gives 7.5 million acre feet to the lower basin, gives 7.5 million acre feet to the upper basin. And then Article 3B is that 1 million acre feet of non-tributary use, which happens down in the Arizona area, on the Gila River, areas like that. And then 1.5 million acre feet of Article 3C is given to Mexico. And again, an interesting part about the allocation of the river, and some people may have done this, but back in the 20s, when they divided the river up, the previous 20 years or the period of record that they used, we now understand to be some of the wettest 20 years on record, oddly enough. And with the river has not produced that type of water significantly, especially since 2000. We've been in a relatively constant state of drought, even though we've had some significant, even very high snowpack water years since then. But that's the real dichotomy. We're allocating numbers and volumes on something that has lots of annual variability. So it makes it difficult. And as far as the delivery between the two, how is that measured? Well, the upper basin shall, and this is an interesting language that some people, if you're into the Colorado River, compact states, the upper states may not cause the flow of the Colorado River at Lee Ferry, Arizona, to be depleted below an aggregate of 75 million acre feet for any 10-year period. So that's really the nuts and bolts of the compact. It's a running average of 10 years. It's not any one individual year. So as long as the upper basin continues to deliver 7.5 million acre feet to Lee Ferry, which is about 2 miles below Glen Canyon Dam, the upper basin is not in any concern of being being called out on a compact call. And that's in the state that we're in right now. Even with the depleted stream flow, the upper basin is not showing us, doesn't seem to be a high probability of a true compact call coming, even though you've heard about the shortages and all the different allocations. It's just not there. It has to do with overuse, and we'll talk a little bit about that here as we go on. This is a little more simple diagram on what I'm talking about, just to kind of show you, using the buckets and simple images. Both the upper basin and lower basin got 7.5 million acre feet annually. When that's all being delivered, everything good and dandy. But the problem is the lower basin is continually using well over 10 million acre feet, more in the tune of 11.5 million acre feet. So as you can see, the upper basin only uses roughly 4 million acre feet on an annual basis. So there's a difference there. And just like your checkbook, if you continue to write checks for more money, you're going to deplete your account. So the lower basin has been calling more water down than Mother Nature has been putting in. The reservoirs were full back in 2000, and they've been relying on that storage. And in the last 10 years, it's become highly critical because we keep letting more water out to the lower basin than we're putting in the upper basin. So it's a tough call. And again, we're falling back on the operation agreements and the compact and how we deal with that. And you may read in the papers almost any day in Colorado. I don't think there's a day that you don't have within the first couple pages of any paper something that deals with water. Most of them have to do with the Colorado River and Lake Powell. A lot of people talk about the elevations, things like that. And they're all, those are the two largest reservoirs in the United States. They were built to work in tandem, supply water and hydropower. And recreational benefits. So they're doing all of that, and it's working hard to maintain its obligations. And all the states are working hard to work on remedying that. The simple fact is you can't overuse the water. You got to be able to fall back within your means. And people are making those changes, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go along here a little further. I'm going to talk about current conditions. And as I started doing this, a lot of times I do these talks in like early April when snowpack is a little bit more prevalent, not August, late August when people are out recreating. Summer, it's hot, you got thunderstorms, hailstorms, things like that. But these next few slides are going to be talking more about climate and climate effects. Mostly drought and what that does. So these two images are from the drought monitor. This is a USDA product that they look and they evaluate what the lands are looking like on drought. And a lot of it has to do with soil moisture and precipitation and water supply kind of factors into that equation. The redder colors show higher impact of drought, and the whiter shows no signs of drought. Yellow is low level drought. Abnormally dry, but what you have here on the left is April 4th of 2023, and then April 2nd of this year. You can see that we actually, even last year in April of 2023, Utah was under abnormally dry conditions. Most of Colorado was fairly drought free. Looking at today, I would say Salt Lake has recovered some, and so has Colorado. Although Arizona and New Mexico, you can see have a lot more yellow and reds in them right now. And then this slide is where we are today. What did August 15th of 2023 look like versus where we are today? And as you can see, abnormally dry conditions have set up throughout the majority of the upper basin, not entirely, but a lot of the basins showing yellow. Definitely Arizona, and you got some severe high levels of drought in southern New Mexico right now. And then the other piece that goes into this, and this is an interesting graphic, is the gray soil moisture that's used by NASA to evaluate soil moisture. And these are really root zone soil moisture. And this kind of just helps people understand what stream flows are doing and how they get set up when you go into a winter with really high or dry soil conditions. Even a wet following year is going to produce low flow rivers because all that storage if you will, pore space within the soil matrix needs to be replenished from the snow. So if you go into a winter with high soil moistures, like we did in April of 2023, you're going to come out looking pretty good. But even both of these, the April 2023, fairly wet in Utah, Colorado was fairly dry. And you can see we've kind of a couple good water years. 2023 was a huge water year, and last year was not too bad in itself. And so we're still showing some dry moisture on the eastern plains and in southwestern Colorado, which is, I think, indicative of the conditions. Even when you have wet conditions in Colorado, it doesn't take long to turn to a more arid and dry conditions. And then again, here's where we are today. Looking at it, looking pretty good overall. I would say, moderately dry soil conditions, but it's at that time of year. We're going into the fall. That's what should be happening a little bit. And then this slide here is really just to go over snowpack, being real general here. I'm not trying to get in the weeds on different charts. You could go down in all different basins, but this is showing the April 1st snow water equivalent in the interior Rocky Mountains and the southwestern Great Basin areas. The blue, darker blue colors are huge numbers in 2023. A lot of them, if you zoom in on those, you're going to see 200% of normal for April 1st snowpack. And you can see as you go into the upper basin up in the Green River in Colorado, just sort of you get more light blues and greens. And then in 2023, it's a little more light blues and greens, but all those light blues and greens are all right around 100% or slightly above, which means we've had two excellent water years back to back. And what has that done for the Colorado River? Overall, it's really helped stabilize things. It isn't there's no one year panacea for the Colorado River. These are going to be decadal adjustments to right the lower elevations of Lake Mead and Lake Powell. One good year is helpful, but it's going to take many years and continued reductions of all water users to actually put a nominal dent in Lake Powell's elevations and the stormwater water in both Lake Powell and Mead. And then here's a little quickie snapshot. This is put out by the Bureau of Reclamation. Simple graphic for people just to kind of understand what's going on in between the two reservoirs. It shows you the elevation of Lake Powell and Lake Mead, and it gives you a rough estimate of their overall volumes and their filled, and then it tells you what they're letting out. So right now, the last week, 12,500 CFS has been being released out of Lake Powell through the Grand Canyon to Lake Mead. And then the outlet of Lake Mead has been releasing about 10,500 CFS, and those deliveries go downstream to the Southern California, and they take their water out downstream of Lake Mead. Roughly 41% in Lake Powell, which is a great improvement over the last year. Still well below half full, and then Lake Mead's been hovering right about 33%. Not really gaining much elevation, but also maintaining elevation. Which is a good thing. So they're kind of stabilized, and that's not without significant reductions of water users in the lower basin, and also through the system conservation pilot programs down there. A lot of people are getting paid to not irrigate. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail on the system conservation pilot programs. These next graphics are put out, and these are the only graphs I'm going to give you today, folks. Not much to look at here. You got a wide yellow, and this is the potential ranges of volumes of storage in Lake Mead. This is where we are today. And then this is showing the Bureau of Reclamation's 24-month study, and these are projections of elevations of storage in Lake Powell over the next 4 years based on operational runs and the 24-month study. They do that. They just came out a week ago. A lot to read there. But the big thing here is to look at the solid darker yellow line, gold line down the middle, which is showing under current conditions and under current operations, they're expecting Lake Mead to slightly gain elevation, which is great. Shows a nice slight trend over the next 4 years. This is potentially the worst case scenario. It could be this lower band. Again, those are all percentiles. And then if we had really high water years, that upper band would be the maximum storage potentially. But I think if you're looking at where you want to be today, it's going to be somewhere between this dash line and this solid line is where you'd like to be. But that median is the 50 percentile kind of, so half of them are going to be above, half of them are going to be below, but most likely you're going to be below that 50 percentile. So you can see that the elevation of Lake Mead's, stable, which is a good thing. And it also shows the elevation of Lake Mead's on the left. That helps. And the next one's going to be the same, but showing you Lake Mead. The telltale sign here is that the charts look similar. The cone of uncertainty between the two is a wider band after as you go out 2 years. But the other trend line that I was talking about in the 50 percentile is really showing that Lake Mead is going to go up and down at a normal volume annually, but it's going to stay relatively flat with some slight reductions in storage, but overall relatively stable. And again, that goes to the operations and the significant cuts and contributions that are happening in Arizona and California as they're trying to reduce their annual demands. These next two are the same, but it's tabular form kind of what I just showed you, just to try and show you that these are critical elevations of Lake Powell. And the big one is the power pool at 3490 at 3,490 feet above sea level. That's when Lake Powell has difficulty actually having enough water in it to turn the turbines. And that would have catastrophic effects. And we'll talk a little bit more about the power in just a second. But the take home here is there's a low probability that you're going to see a low elevation in Lake Powell over the next 2 years. Slight increase in chance in 27 and 28. But again, we're going to be redoing the guidelines and operational rules. So there may be more changes to come on how things operate on the Colorado River. Lake Mead, same thing. You're not seeing a whole lot of concern over the next 2 years. So we've somewhat dodged a bullet from the 2022-23 year, and we've managed to stabilize elevations and continue to even store a little bit of water in there. And then this graphic's just a real quick one showing Lake Powell unregulated inflow up through this last year, showing the variability. Again, this is the allocation amount here going across that we want to produce at least that much water in the upper basin. As you can see, we had a significantly wet year last year, produced roughly 18 million acre feet in the water year 2024. And we're hoping to continue to see those types of deliveries to Lake Powell as we go forward over the next, say, decade or so. And then these last two graphics here are something that's put out by Becky Mitchell's group. Becky Mitchell is the state's Colorado River Commissioner, appointed by the governor, a new title she acquired last year, and the Colorado Water Conservation Board. And these graphics are interesting because they show you down here where's the water being used, and it's showing that the lower basin uses roughly right around 4 million acre feet here. And then the upper basin is regularly over 10 million acre feet on their deliveries to their water users. And then this graphic here on the side is an interesting one because this has to do more with the operational guidelines in 2026 that everybody's talking about. And this is something that the upper basin just relatively recently released this. And they're asking the Bureau of Reclamation to consider changes to the operations of Lake Powell and Lake Mead to be more in tune with what's physically going on hydrologically and climate-wise within the basin. It allows flexibility within the compact, but it really uses the teacup model here. And as there's more water stored in Lake Powell would then have annual obligations of releasing more water. A reservoir that was full and over 90% is going to release a full amount annually. And as we get down into these lower tiers here, that will reduce the amount of deliveries out of Lake Powell significantly to help conserve elevations. What is the concern of elevations? It's primarily it's storage, but the other is power production in both of these. Hydraulic head is the amount of water above a turbine, and the higher volume and higher elevations produce more power. And so that 3490 is a concern for all whereas even Lake Mead has a minimum power pool also. But this is the first time that the basins have gotten together and actually proposed. This is, again, this is fairly fresh out on the road. Hasn't been put to the test yet, but it's starting the negotiation process. And I believe all 4 states in the Upper Basin have signed on to this approach. It makes sense. And again, it's back to that. They don't want the Upper Basin to cause the flows at Leeds Ferry to diminish below 75 million acre feet over 10 years. So again, this is something that's new. And it also relies on the lower basin still taking significant cuts and reductions in their deliveries out of Lake Powell to Southern California. Arizona being the junior state down there, they take significant cuts. But again, it's a two-phased approach. You got the Upper Basin asking, we are willing to help reduce our uses, but we want you to reduce the deliveries out of Lake Powell. Lake Powell is really our water supply. It's kind of the battery of the Colorado River, if you will, and we want to keep it charged. And this is something I say hats off to Becky and her team for getting this developed. And I think Utah and Wyoming are right on board with us in this, and I think it's going to be interesting to see if the Bureau of Reclamation is willing to adopt operational changes based on hydrology and climate rather than strict volumes. So that's something to keep an eye on, folks, and talk to your local water providers if you want more information on that. But that's something to keep an eye on. And again, this is after 2026. It's only 2024 right now, but we'll be in 2026 before you know it. And we need to come up with a new operational plan that's going to be effective and help deplete or help reduce depletions in the basin. And as far as the basin uses go, I think the power pool, again, 3490 is the significant number. Anything below that at Lake Powell is going to reduce power production. Right now at their elevation, Lake Powell only produces about 61% of its capability for power production. It annually produces roughly 5 billion kilowatt hours. And that reduction, every foot level of decline in Lake Powell decreases their ability to produce power by about 3 million megawatts, or loss for roughly every foot. So that's, if you get that, that's a fair amount of power production loss. And we're hovering right at their their minimum power pool. We're above it, but we're not far above it. Both Lake Mead and Lake Powell, they've gone in and helped. They put lower flow turbines on to deal with these lower head to help produce more efficient power. And then the reduction in power has a reduction in revenue. And that is really where I was going with this. That reduction in revenue helps pay for a lot of the environmental programs that the Bureau of Reclamation performs in the management of the Lake Powell and Lake Mead. And without that, we don't have the funding to do programs for the recovery program to help with salinity on the Colorado River, all these different things that are managed through the endangered species and the salinity control are going to lose their funding, or their primary source of funding. So that's an obligation then is going to also come back to some of the states. So again, that's something that we want to keep making sure that we keep as much water in Lake Powell, so that we can continue to produce those revenues, so that WAPA can help pay for those environmental programs. It's sort of the tail wagging the dog, but it's really the power production and power revenues that really that drive the day, if you will. Then what does that mean for the basin as far as growth, the ability to serve water to the Southern California region? It's a critical piece of California's water supply is the Colorado River. They have a very intricate state water plan, but again, the delivery of that Colorado River water to Southern California is significant. It's not insignificant for Colorado. We expect to have 9 million people in the state of Colorado by 2050. I'm not sure what that looks like, folks, but it seems like it's going to be awfully crowded. All right, there's a lot more busy days on I-25 and I-70. And then what's that mean for the Colorado River Basin? They're expecting that to be 76 million by 2060. When I started working on the Colorado River's issues in 2007, we estimated the population at 30 million. It's now somewhere in the 40 plus range, I believe, that are served by Colorado River water. So Colorado River water goes a long way, and it really is the lifeblood of the Southwest. And it's definitely a workhorse of a river. And then how does that play into climate change? How does that affect hydrology? How does that affect water supply? Well, it's said, and these are people that are smarter than me that have determined this, but roughly that the climate change, call it what you want, aridification is a watchword that's been used, a buzzword. It's been used a lot lately. I kind of like that. It kind of draws away from the climate change. It just talks about, we're hot and dry here in the Southwest, and what does that mean? But the hydrology analysis shows that for every degree of warming, the Fahrenheit has the ability to reduce, the stream flows by roughly 3 to 9%. I call that roughly 5% reduction in stream flows for every degree. So that could be also explaining why we're having significant reductions in stream flows, even based on normal snowpacks are producing lower volumes of runoff, and it's primarily due to that warming climate. It evaporates more, causes more transit losses. So what's that mean? Less water in the river. From there, why does this matter? Why do we want to conserve water? What is Resource Central and the City of Boulder coming to talk to you about here? It really is everybody's issue is conservation and efficiencies. Being a wise water user, I could probably take shorter showers myself, but we all play into the amount of use that we have. But it ensures water for future generations and the growth of those populations that we're going to see as people start moving to Colorado and into the Southwest. It also reduces your rates as a ratepayer, less energy costs for treatment plants, because ultimately, more expensive to treat, more expensive to deliver. Who pays for it? We do. It's not highly subsidized. It's being subsidized by the ratepayer. So we're trying to do that on the best end for everybody to make more efficient use of our water. And it also helps your local economies and your local sanitation districts. How can we use less water? What does it mean to use less water? And this schematic just really kind of shows you where in your household you use most of your water. And then as far as use goes, agricultural use in the Colorado River Basin is about 50% of the overall water uses for agricultural purposes, primarily growing feedstocks for cattle operations. So you can see that. We use it basically in the shower and for cooking and for sanitation purposes. I've often said, the kids today, they go in their house, first thing they want to turn on is the Wi-Fi, start gaming, things like that. And they would probably say that their internet Wi-Fi is maybe their most important utility. I'm going to tell you folks, I think your water and your sanitary sewer are your two most important utilities for your house. You wouldn't be able to sit around and game very long if you didn't have running water in your house. So that's one of the things that we're trying to just help people conserve, use less, run your wash machines full, dishwashers full, etc. And then this last one is just a simple one, using the water as a simple base. Wash your laundry and dishes full loads, always turn off running water, take shorter showers, eliminate any and all leaks, and reduce flows from your toilet and shower heads. Those are real simple, and I think most of the municipalities on the Front Range all have conservation measures. It's interesting to talk about conservation. Just real briefly, I'm going to say, when a lot of the conservation and conservancy districts were formed, conservation was really to impound and store water. It wasn't to reduce use. It had a very different connotation than it does today. Conservation today is limiting your use, reducing your uses, and then you also have efficiencies, which are permanent reductions by doing that, and by using low flow toilet heads, things like that. Those are more efficient means, using agricultural sprinklers versus gravity surface diversions as a way to reduce and be more efficient in your application of that water. So those are just some things you can do. We all have our part. Cities and municipalities along the Front Range and within the Colorado River Basin, you're going to see a large pull for turf removal both on residential uses and homes. They're going to limit the amount of turf that you can put in, hardscaping, and using native plants. We all want to use plants that can thrive in Colorado's conditions. It is a dry state, so using arid plants that use less water, that's the way to do it. A lot of agencies like Denver Water and Northern Water have conservation programs and efficiency programs. They will go out and do audits for you, as does Resource Central. That's how I got exposed to Resource Central. We were working on a project up here with them, and they were working on outdoor landscape irrigation within the county, and then coming up with codes and regulations to help the municipalities effectively codify these conservation measures and efficiencies into their building regulations and codes. It's something that you're going to see more and more of. You're going to see drought plans. You're going to see conservation plans for municipalities. They're already out there doing this, but you're going to see more and more states within the interior West doing that. As we move forward, because it's in everybody's best interest to use as little water and put it to the best use that we can. And with that, I think I'm gonna wind down. I appreciate everybody's time. I hope I didn't completely bore you. I'm not even sure if anyone's still on, but we're winding down, and I think we got one more round of questions I'm willing to answer. And then if people want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at my contact information. I'll answer your emails, whatever. But if there's any more questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. That was very informative in a short period of time too. All right, let's see. So when you had the graphs of the projected water for Lake Mead and Lake Powell, how were those projections kind of determined?
So that's all based on hydrologic operational models by the Bureau of Reclamation. They actually out of Boulder, I believe, is where that main group works. But they run simulated models. That's a simulation, and they run it. Again, they call it the 24-month study because it's looking specifically. It's really a 4-year window, but looking really closely at the next 2 years, and then they kind of project out for those following 2 years. But that's a river simulation model, Colorado River, that they call it the CRIMS, I believe. It's in there. It's on the headline of that. But it's takes into account everybody's water use as much as they can. It's a simple model, but very detailed too. You can't. They look at all different types of uses, and they run those models based on potential hydrologic scenarios, and that's where you get that wider range of variability. Because if you have a really high snowpack year, that's going to mean there's more water. Whereas if you have a really dry year, and they run those different aspects in the model to get different outputs for those percentiles.
And using like population growth projections as well in there, or is it specific to current?
I don't know specifically about that, but I would think that the municipalities would have a depletion factor in there. So as they go up, they're going to increase that.
All right. So you mentioned about how the first time the basins are really getting together to talk about changing things based on hydrology and climate. So that, do you think that could be something in the future that every few years will need to be evaluated, or is this kind of like a one time we're going to reevaluate and then see?
No, it's actually an operational guideline period. So 2026 is the time that this operational guidelines ends. And I believe they were started, it was 2007. So it's a 25 year window, I think, of operations. And it gives the water users within the states the ability to help direct the Bureau on how to operate the river system that works within their water rights and their compact allocations. In 2007, they changed the way they allocated deliveries out of Lake Powell and Lake Mead based under some certain criteria. And that's what they've been operating under, and it still allows for that over delivery a little bit. But it has tiered approaches, but they think it's time for something a little bit more refined. It was a good approach in 2007, and that was really the first time that they altered operations, I believe, on the system in a number of years. So that was a first, and this is the next stab at it, if you will.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's see. We have a couple more. So this one says, I participate in multiple water conservation programs, and my question is about appropriated rights in regards to the South Platte. For example, if I use less water at home, no turf, et cetera, will less water be available for downstream flow in the South Platte, therefore impacting agriculture and wildlife habitats?
So that's a great question, and it really goes to the root of water rights and consumptive uses in the prior appropriation system. That's a good question for what we talked about today, and I think the answer is yes. If you use less water, there's it's a kind of a different cycle though. You have less return flows if you're not irrigating, right? You know, if you're putting water on a lawn, you're gonna have return flows. If you're not, you're gonna have less. So you're going to be living within the hydrologic system a little bit more. But I think the overall was as you do changes and you stop applying water to lands adjacent to the rivers, you're going to see less water in the rivers on any given day, just because of there may be more water at one time because you're not using it, but you're going to have less of it coming back over time. So when you get into the fall and spring, there's going to be less return flows. And that's one of the reasons water court was instituted, because if you do a change case and try to move that water somewhere else, you have to protect those return flows for those downstream users who are relying on that water. You just can't take that away from them because that's part of their water right too. And so that's where the water court case and in-stream flows kind of really play into those court decrees.
That makes sense. And where can you go to find out where your water rights fit in on the list of water rights that you mentioned?
So I would say the state engineer's office, Division of Water Resources, they have a online tool, which is, you know, when I started in 1996 at the state engineer's office, we were using DOS prompts for the database entries. Now it's map driven. You can go look on the internet and pull up almost any water right in a matter of seconds. It's actually pretty fascinating and pretty neat. So I would say the CDSS, Colorado Decision Support System, is the kind of the backbone of the database that holds water rights. And you can get on there. There's tutorials how to use it. You just search query a water right within your basin, and then it actually will give you some of that administrative information. It also has all the decrees and image documents that are associated with that stuff. It's pretty, you know, it's not perfect, but it's a huge improvement, and they're constantly revising that as they go along.
Great. And you said CDSS, is that right?
CDSS, Division of Water Resources.
Okay, great.
And if we put that in some notes of some sort, I probably could make a slide for that. That's something I haven't added to, and that's maybe something we could add into this program, is how to search water rights. Actually,
yeah. Agree. And this last one is maybe a bit of a larger philosophical question, but why do Colorado Front Range cities continue to expand exponentially as if there's an unlimited supply of water for the future? So,
well, if I could answer that one, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. But
that's for another webinar.
No, yeah, that's a good question, and it's a policy driven one for sure. I think the short answer is yes, but it's hard to answer that one straight up.
Yeah,
I think it's driven by a number of factors.
Sure.
So
it gives us something to think on.
no, yeah, there's yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying those philosophical ones are deep, because it really cuts to the chase of what Colorado needs. And back to what I was talking about, codes and things like that. And I'm not going to, you say they just want to grow. They do want to grow. It's a great statement, but I've worked with some of the counties and folks on the Front Range in my capacity as a project manager, and we do a lot of water planning. And a lot of the counties don't have water rights per se, but they can, you know, they develop, and they're concerned about that growth. And they're every bit as concerned as anyone else in here, and they don't want that rampant growth. Some of the cities, you know, and the water providers, you're driven because you're providing a product in your enterprise. Enterprise doesn't work if you don't sell water. So it's sort of a dichotomy. You're trying to sell water, but you want to use less, so then you raise your rates. All that stuff kind of falls into all that. So it just comes back to, you know, availability, one, and smart growth, two, and then protecting, I think, our landscapes. Colorado, we like our landscapes. We got to protect those view corridors. It's not about strip malls, and agriculture, folks. We have to protect agriculture. If you don't protect the agricultural water uses in Colorado, it's going to be like you just said, it's the dry up.
Well, we have a lot of thank yous coming in. So thank you so much, Mike. This was incredible, very, very informative. And I just want to piggyback on your mention of conservation and turf removal, and just say that Resource Central does still have a few garden in a boxes available this fall. We think that August, September is an incredible time to plant and kind of gives you a head start on those spring blooms. So if anyone is interested, you can check out at resourcecentral.org. We have a couple gardens still available that have lovely, beautiful landscapes designed for your Colorado yard. And with that, just a reminder that we'll be sending out this recording afterward. So if anyone has follow-up questions, you can rewatch or reach out to Mike directly. And you can also reach out to us at Garden Info, and I'll actually put that in the chat, gardeninfo@resourcecentral.org if anything comes up after tonight. But thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. You all have a great night.
Have a good one.
Hey there, you still there?
I am in it. We are. I'm still live, but I am still here. And I also wanted to thank Crystal, but I think she hopped off.
I just do you want my slide deck?